Hi, everybody. I think that we're live now because you can just see me. My name's Katherine Miller. I'm the Vice President of Impact at the James Beard Foundation. I'm super excited to be here today. And I think we're going to let Paola and Ed into this session. Here comes Paola. Yay. Hey, everybody, this is Paola Velez. Did I say that right, Paola?
Yeah.
Great. Who is an amazing, was the executive pastry chef at Kithkin, has just come over to be the executive pastry chef with Maydan and Compass Rose in Washington, D.C., but is also the indomitable co-founder of Bakers Against Racism, which we're going to spend some time talking about. And is Ed now in? And here comes Ed Lee, Chef Ed Lee, amazing author, chef, the owner of 610 Magnolia restaurants, 610 Magnolia, and also restaurants in DC and Louisville. And for the context of this conversation, one of the co-founders, the co-founder of the Lee Initiative. So I'm really excited to have both of you here. Thanks for taking time out of your super busy schedules at this crazy time. I really wanted to have this conversation with Menus of Change, the audience here. We at James Beard have been doing a lot of work over the years to engage chefs more directly in policy advocacy. But what COVID really has cemented for us is the chef as restaurant owner at the center of community-based activism, whether that be the local community or the different communities that we all represent. And so I wanted to just the super awkward question at the moment, how are you both doing? Ed, how are you? Where are you?
I'm in Louisville, and it's literally, it's day to day. I mean, I wake up every morning and see what new crisis I have to deal with, and it's, we have our good days and bad days, and I just try and stay positive throughout all this. Yeah, I just can't think too far ahead, and just day by day.
Yeah, and Paola, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Everything in Washington, D.C. seems to be touch and go, so it's, I take it with a grain of salt,
You had a tweet today that was like, even salt looks like sugar, so be careful, or sugar looks like salt, so be careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
I think I always, every now and then I stir the thought pot, to see where people are at and make sure that I'm keeping people. Oh, maybe I'm problematic. I don't know.
You are not problematic. You are you and Ed are two of the chief troublemakers that I look to for a lot of guidance in this industry. Really amazing. So I'm glad that you're both healthy and well. I know that it's day by day and figuring out everything with a grain of salt. Paola, I wanted to start with you because I feel like, Bakers Against Racism, tell us a little bit about what the impetus was for that, why you felt it was so important, and talk to us a little bit about the amazing impact and results that you guys have had so far.
Yeah, so Bakers Against Racism was born out of a necessity to help others kind of figure out how to activate, right? Willa Polini, a pastry chef here in Washington, D.C., she reached out to me after I had a string of donut pop-ups where I was raising money for an organization called Ayuda DC, which helps our undocumented workforce, since they were often ignored or forgotten from the conversation of funding. So after making donuts for almost more than a month, my back hurt, I was tired, and I only was able to donate $1,000, which isn't like a little bit of money, right? Because if I lost $1,000 on the floor today, I would have a panic attack. But when I thought about the grand scheme of things and making sure that I was baking to be a form of activism for me, I wanted to give that same kind of like essence that I learned for a month during COVID, hosting decentralized pop-ups in a very centralized way for others. So Willa reached out to me, and we got to writing everything down. I wrote down everything I did during Doña Dona, and then I just made it shareable. Google is your best friend, you know? And I was able to do like parameters, right? You host your pop-up sales on this day, cut it off by this day, make your prep pickup these days, socially distant, fast, efficient. Everybody knows what they're making. We're reducing waste, and we are picking decentralized organizations that help the Black community in your own backyard. I wanted you to know these organizations that have been doing the work for 10, 15 years, and you didn't even know them. So we were able to raise, within the span of 2 weeks, $1.9 million with $0 down, because I am a chef, and that means that I'm broke. So it's so interesting for me, because I always had this like thought, I can't do anything grandiose because I don't have money. But I proved to myself even that I didn't need more than the resources that I had online. And that's what Bakers Against Racism turned into, this community of bakers that normally get like written off when the going gets tough in restaurant economy. And we all got together to bake for Black lives.
Yeah, no, it was really inspiring to see. And for the audience, if you missed it, there's a huge piece in the New York Times this week about all the groups led by bakers, many women, many from Latinx or Black communities, who have been leading sort of the resistance and baking the resistance. So there's a great piece that profiles the work that you did with Dona Dona and Bakers Against Racism, but also Southern Bakers for Black Lives or Southern Bakers Against Racism, all and a variety of other groups. It's really inspiring. One of the reasons I wanted so much to have a conversation with you and Ed was you did an open source community-based model for Bakers Against Racism. And Ed, tell us a little bit about your work with the Lee Initiative, because you started like on women's mentorship, but you made a huge shift to really focus on local communities, local sourcing with the Lee Initiative.
Yeah, so we shut down on March 16th, like every other restaurant in Kentucky. And I had a small nonprofit called the Lee Initiative, and we were doing diversity programs and women's programming. And we quickly just out of necessity pivoted and started, turned my restaurant into a relief kitchen. So we were feeding, I think the first day, 200 people came. It was for any restaurant worker from any hospitality industry in the city that had been furloughed or laid off. And back in early March, like no one knew what was going on. It was all chaos. And so, you know, we had stuff in our walk-ins and our other restaurants. We just wanted to give it away. So we had like 200 people show up the first night for food. And I don't know how word got out so fast. The next night, on night 2, we fed 400 people in the first hour. And Maker's Mark had been a partner with us in the women's program, and they came and they volunteered, and they saw what we were doing, and kudos to them. I mean, they quickly realized, like, this is not a Louisville problem, it's not a Kentucky problem, it's a nationwide issue. And so where we found the loophole was, we said, listen, you're not doing any advertising for the next 6 months. Like, can we take your budgeting dollars and will you help me recreate this around the country? And I mean, within 2 hours, they said yes. And we got seed money. And in the next 2.5 weeks, we activated 19 kitchens across the country. Everywhere from Seattle, LA, Detroit, Tampa, Atlanta, Houston, I mean, and New York. And then we said, okay, we're in your markets, you know. So for example, Eduardo Jordan activated Seattle. I know very little about Seattle. And we created these partnerships, and I said, Eduardo, can you bang the drums and get people to donate from Seattle? And every dollar you raise in Seattle goes through my nonprofit, but 96 cents of every dollar goes back to Seattle. And he said, sure. And I think he raised, just by himself, I know he raised over $250,000. And the seed money that we got on March 16th or March 18th was enough to outfit each relief kitchen for about 2 to 3 weeks. And we didn't realize that this whole shutdown was going to last longer than that. We were able to raise enough money to keep every relief kitchen open for almost 2.5 months. And to this day, right now, which is 4 months later, we still have a few relief kitchens still open, and we're about to activate another one in LA with Ray Garcia at Broken Spanish, targeting specifically undocumented workers who have been forgotten throughout this whole thing, who aren't getting unemployment checks. So it's fun. This work was supposed to last 3 weeks, and it's now lasted 4 months, and it's basically because we were able to just rally people in their own cities to continue to donate money, and we just give it back to them.
Yeah, and Paola, that was so important for you. I mean, that sort of open source activism of Bakers Against Racism. I mean, that was money. You said that in, you know, your introduction of it. Your money went directly to organizations that may not have been super visible or well known by these people. And you also had been working with Dona Dona around undocumented workers, and both of you have just mentioned that. Paola, how important were those, like that community-based active for you? Was that the center at this?
Absolutely. You know, for me as a person who identifies as Black, the community efforts that the restaurant industry brings is tenfold, right? We all started as community organizations. You know, it was just recently that we became the celebrity, you know, and I wanted everybody to kind of invent themselves to think about the communities around them, you know, and to really focus on the person, not the profit, you know. And I wanted that was fun, right? Like I could ask for donations till the day like ends, right? I could be like, please donate. But how much more exciting is it if I'm like, please donate and exchange your money for this donut, you know? And then I would be the steward of making sure that that money goes to the right place, you know? Yeah. Folks are more receptive, you know what I mean? So for me to focus on the undocumented workforce, to focus on Black communities, to focus on women, to focus on LGBTQIA, it's one of those things where it's right, you know, we are a service industry and we serve, you know, and to go back to that like homecoming, even in the midst of chaos, it's just, it feels right, you know, and I know that other bakers, it resonates with them too, you know.
Well, it resonates. I mean, it really resonated with me, both of these models too, because it leaves something in place. Like it's not just some national organization coming in. Like Ed, I mean, you and Lindsay were very intentional about this, like the example you gave about Eduardo, like 96 cents of every of that one of those dollars is going to stay in that community, which helps strengthen that community, right? The money that from Bakers Against Racism that went to these organizations that for them, $1,000 is a big deal. Right.
Yeah.
And talk about why, I mean, you also did the Reboot effort around local sourcing too. Can you talk a little bit about that as part of this chain that you guys have now created?
Yeah. So well, as cities started to reopen and restaurants started to reopen, what we identified was, you know, if there's a crisis bigger than the restaurant crisis right now, it's the farm crisis. And you know, because farmers aren't rock stars and celebrities, they're not getting front page news, and it's not a catastrophe. But I know of dozens of farmers that are on the verge of bankruptcy, like as we speak. And so what we pivoted, and we saw this need. So we've committed $1 million to purchase farm products from small independent farms that sell direct to restaurants. We're already at $600,000 spent. And what we do is we go into a city, we cut checks to the farmers, and then we donate the food back to small independent restaurants in that same market that need the food. So we just launched Chicago, where we're helping 16 farms, 16 restaurants. We connect them, and then they basically give away the food to the restaurants. And what it basically, it's sort of reactivating the supply chain, which has basically just died 3 months ago. But one of the things that we made a very concerted effort to go, the restaurants that we help, are, it's a weird thing to say, but we're trying to create a food supply chain that's a little bit kinder, a little bit more diverse, a little bit more, there's a generousness to it, so we're identifying restaurateurs that are just have been doing good work, are nice people. I know it's a weird thing to say, but we know who nice people are. We're identifying people who have women in leadership, people of color, and we're donating to those restaurants. And those restaurants, like if you look at our list of restaurants in Chicago that we're helping, more than 80% of them are women or people of color. These are not the restaurants that get the attention. They're not on Chicago Eater. They're not getting Michelin starred attention. They're good restaurants and they're good people. And I cannot tell you how many of the restaurants called me and said, I don't know why you chose me because I'm not the star of Chicago, but thank you. And our response was that because you matter too. Like I want a food system and I want a restaurant industry where everyone has a chance. It's not just the Michelin starred restaurants, but it's all of us. Like we all love tacos. Like we can't just have Michelin starred restaurants and not the taco restaurants. Like we all have to survive this. So we're trying to do that. I mean, we're launching in DC next week, and New York hopefully after that. So we've got a lot of work still left to do.
Yeah, no, and there's a couple of questions in the chat, which I'm going to try and broaden out. But I mean, to that point, I mean, Paola, what's next for Bakers Against Racism, right? Because I think one of the questions in the chat is, do you think this all continues, right? What does this look like 3 months from now? Is there still a need for, the type of fundraising you're doing? Ed, and then Ed, turn to you, like, what does it look like for the Lee Initiative? I mean, is this part of your now permanent model? But Paola, like, what's next for bakers?
Yeah, so for us at Bakers Against Racism, we wanted to make sure that we weren't making just a moment, but a movement. So we will be reactivating at the end of the year to do another bake sale. You guys are the first to know. But we are going to be reactivating to reinvigorate and keep saying Black Lives Matter throughout this whole thing. We don't want it to just be a PR push or something that isn't pure, right? And then when we think about opportunities and working with brands, we are going to be making micro grants so that once the industry does start to work and make profits and open up again safely, I would love to make sure that BIPOC bakers have these micro grants to maybe buy the laptop that they need to launch their online business successfully, to be able to pay for their rent for a month, 2 months, 3 months, where they would stage somewhere that they can learn immensely. For me, it's making sure that I redirect where these funds are going to. And then to continue to donate to these organizations that are impacting Black lives and BIPOC communities. Without these organizations, without the flavor profiles of BIPOC people in America, America wouldn't be what it is today, So when I think of the future of Bakers Against Racism is just to keep marching forward, to keep making sure that we are holding ourselves steadfastly to change in the future, whatever that may be, because COVID is a very real thing. So I hope that my little sliver, my little moment in time is turned into something way bigger than I could ever dream or imagine. Because if I had these opportunities when I was starting out in the industry, imagine what more I could have been able to accomplish.
No, absolutely. And I love it, right? Like you're going to reinvigorate, rebuild the bake sale so people can have more of an opportunity to participate. The idea of micro grants is so huge. And, I do think moving from moments to movements is a big deal. And we have to keep saying Black Lives Matter, right? We have to keep saying their names, right? Right? And, Ed, I want to hear about what's next for you, Ed, but this is a good opportunity too. Like in Louisville, you guys specifically stood up the Mac and Tea Kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. Which was, we, in all of this, right? In addition to COVID, a Black barbecue pitmaster was a victim of police violence, racist violence in your own city. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit, then also about what's next for the initiative?
Yeah, so the Mac and Tea Community Kitchen we set up in the midst of all the protesting and all the violence, and I just want to say for everyone out there who knows, like Louisville is a wonderful place, and it's a place that I have lived for 19 years. and every city has its issues and problems. And when this happened with Brianna and with David McAtee, and there was so much fighting and there was so much hatred and there was and we became this nexus of division and hate, and I just felt like I had to do something, to one positive thing. And so I closed my restaurant, Milkwood, and turned it into the McAtee Kitchen, and we donate 3,000 meals a week to the community around where David McAtee had set up. Everything's in honor of him. We donate back to his family, and we give out over 7,000 pounds of groceries a week. And we have now funded that until December, and hopefully we will make it a permanent thing. And I think, jumping off what Paola said, to me, change happens not because a few people do grandiose things. I think real change happens because millions of people do millions of nice things. And I think, there's, we're two examples of it, let's say, but there are millions of people out there in every community doing great things. And we need to be honoring and championing them and making sure that, like, to me, the Lee Initiative is now a permanent focus in our company. It is something that we will do forever. And it's hard, like I don't know the way you see it, Paola, but this started as something where I was selfishly trying to save my business, and now I'm just trying to save our industry. Like we need to figure out how to save our entire industry and thousands, millions of jobs, just quickly fading before our eyes. And it's tragic. It's hard. It's heartbreaking every day.
Yeah, no,
absolutely. I mean,
Paola, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. When Chef Ed said that, that you started out in one place, it's something that I talk about all the time. In the industry, we were all just fighting to keep our doors open. We never expected the doors to fly off the hinges, and I think that when we refocus and we pivot, we can create beautiful things. That's what I keep saying with Bakers Against Racism. They want this figurehead. They want me as the spokesperson. And I'm like, I'm just a portion of what happened. Everyone else who donated their time, that's what made this whole movement happen, And it's so beautiful to see like-minded individuals. Like, I've been following your work closely, and it's an honor to be able to be in the same industry as you.
Thank you. Likewise.
It is an honor to be in the industry with both of you. And you really are. I mean, one thing I've always respected about both of you is you use every opportunity to lift up the people around you as well, right? There's a great opportunity to bring more people down this path. I mean, Ed, I loved what you said about a kinder, more diverse and generous business. I mean, it's already one of the in some ways most generous, but really that kindness piece, reintroducing that. There was another question. There are a couple of really tactical questions that you're getting from the audience. Paola, how can people find you? Where people, is it a website, Instagram? Give us all the handles, websites, etc. for Bakers Against Racism.
So Bakers Against Racism really was a virtual movement. Everything was decentralized. So you can find us at Bakers Against Racism on Instagram. Twitter is Bakers for BLM. And then you can just go to our website, www.bakersagainstracism.com, for all the resources to host your own pop-up. And there's downloadable forms. It's free. It's accessible to all. All you have to do is follow the hashtag, tag us, and we'll reshare and repost what you're going to do.
I will say it's also good for home bakers, because I baked a cake and then made a donation. So even those of us that don't do it professionally can participate, which I also thought was fun. Ed, how do we find you? And people want to know how they can volunteer.
Yes, so our website is www.leeinitiative.org, but you can find us on Facebook, Lee Initiative, Instagram. There are sign-up sheets on Facebook. If you connect with us through Facebook, we have someone, an admin person, that watches all that and responds to all that. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're still out there and doing what we can. So we need all the help we can get.
Yeah, and just one very specific question, really around the business model. There were a couple questions in the chat of whether becoming a relief kitchen is part of the new business model of restaurants. I'm wondering if, Ed, if you have some specific thoughts, but Paola, if you want to chime in too, feel free.
I think this is a very convoluted issue, and it's a bigger question, which we don't have time for here. But I've said it all along. When we shut down America, we didn't realize that restaurants and food was an essential business. And what we should have done, which is, like World Central Kitchen is doing it now, and we're kind of doing it now. But what we should have done is given billions of dollars to restaurants, like 200 restaurants in every city, to activate as relief kitchens, to feed the entire city, not just restaurant workers, not just frontline workers, but everyone. I don't know if you guys remember, we had months of people raiding supermarkets, hoarding stuff, where we had price, gouging, and families of 4 who'd never cooked and all of a sudden have to cook, 21 meals a week, and they don't even know how to do it, and they're wasting food, and so much waste, so much inefficiency when we didn't treat chefs as relief workers. We didn't treat them as frontline workers. We treated chefs as expendable people that can just go on unemployment. Instead, we were trained, talented frontline workers that could have done the job of helping to feed America, and we would have avoided a lot of this food supply chain crash that happened. And so, yes, the answer is, there's a much longer answer to it, but the short answer is yes. Like there is a permanent need for restaurants to be relief workers, and there's money from state ag. There's FEMA money. There's a lot of money out there, and if we can show that we can do it safely, efficiently, we can feed a lot of people with a little bit of money and a few ingredients. Like, there is a future for this.
Yeah, and I would encourage everybody, there are 2 pieces of federal legislation that will ultimately set up funds that will be able to be more easily accessed, the HEROES Act and the FEED Act. And if anybody needs help with those, feel free to reach out. There's one more thing before we go, because I think they're going to pull the mic on us in about 2 minutes. One is for the organizers, they've asked, and Paola and Ed, if you are open, some people in the chat would love to, whether it's an info email address, I know they can DM Bakers Against Racism and on Instagram. If there's a specific way to get in touch with you, I think people would like us to follow up with something like that. So I'll work with the administrators of this. One last word of wisdom. Somebody asked it better than I could in the chat, which is, they're talking to students. What's your last word of wisdom, or the thing that you want people to know that will hopefully keep them inspired moving forward? Ed, you go first, and then Paola will close with you.
Yeah, I would say if you love this industry and you love what restaurants stand for so much more than just food, I would say go out there and activate, do things. Go to a protest, go to a restaurant. If you can't go to a restaurant, get takeout. If you can't afford takeout, write to your local government, write to your senator and your congressman. Tell them how much the independent restaurant means to you. We're fighting this fight ourselves, but we also need the general public to go out there and speak on behalf of us and say, we want the restaurant industry to survive, and we want it to be fair and equitable. Support go out there and do your research, support the people that are doing the good work out there, and just be active. Just go out there and I always say it's not enough to be on Twitter. Like, you have to be out there and active and doing positive things for the community. And I guarantee you, I don't care what city you're in, I guarantee you there's a food bank, a local restaurant that's helping, a fire department, someone that needs help. Go out there and volunteer. They need your help right now more than ever.
Wear a mask. Paola.
Wear a mask.
For me, I know that this is a little more centralized to pastry and bakers, and I can speak on this. Our industry is born of the fire. If there are students right now that are so nervous of not being able to maybe fulfill their dream or their calling, that'll come. We have to just keep working towards that end game, and know that there are people, a new guard, so to speak, that is making a way, paving a way and clearing the rubble behind us, so that we will have this equity within the restaurant system, where we're not just in addition to a restaurant, but that we are built into the business model. And we're doing these things, like Chef Ed and myself, we're making sure that we're not just showing the pretty things that we can make and the tasty things that we can make, but the way that food is a pathway to make us whole and connect us as humans. So if you're a student right now and you're nervous and you're very anxious and worried, keep baking, you know. At the beginning of this, I hated to see sugar and flour and butter. I just hated it, you know. And I had to make a starter to realize that I was giving something life and sustaining life. And in that, I found healing. So start practicing. Now's the time to make sure that you can make your techniques, you know, from step 1 to step 10 perfectly, you know, well, good enough, you know, but, you know, make sure that you kind of reinvent yourself and just learn as much as you can, give as much as you can, and take in a breath and release it every day, you know, because tomorrow is not promised, but what we have today is education and growth and the tasty things that you know you can make.
I love it. Well said. I want to thank both of you so much. For the audience, you can check out Bakers Against Racism on Instagram, and that's the best place to look at everything, I think. And then the Lee Initiative. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Katherine, chefs, I greatly appreciate you taking the time today, and we look forward to seeing you. And thanks so much for your inspirational words. Even I teared up just a little bit. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Please enjoy the rest of the sessions, and I will hopefully see you all soon. Okay?
Bye. Thank you guys all very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. I just wanted to give you a quick recap of what we are also offering during this time. Here we go. As Jackie mentioned, you can use the tabs on the left to engage, as well as engage with everyone who is attending today, from your peers and suppliers to the presenters, through our one-on-one networking. We also have a virtual Meet the Author booth in your expo area. We are also making who are making it possible. You can also visit the Expo Booth tab to visit our generous sponsors who are making it possible to offer this program tuition free. The booths will feature special presentations and videos, live demos, and interactive small group discussions. This slide shows you what is on deck for the week, and the sponsors featured, as well as their themed programming, will change week to week. So we hope you'll check in there often to gain a variety of new insights. Don't forget that you are entered in a raffle for each activity you engage in. And if you attend and participate in all 6 weeks, you'll have a chance to win free registration and travel to next year's Menus of Change conference. We will be resuming programming on the Stage tab at 11:40 Pacific, 2:40 Eastern, for a look into a healthy, protective foods for our immune system. So please enjoy your break in the expo, and we will see you shortly. Thank you, everyone.